we all want to show the best of ourselves. Nobody likes to share our weaknesses or things that might not look um, put us in the best light. I think those are things that make us human, and those are things that allow us to connect. So I would tell people if they're starting to blog, do those things that you might be uncomfortable with. Of just be yourself, be your authentic self. Um, I've it was a this quote that stuck with me about a couple months ago from the Global Leadership Summit was this leader, this pastor named Craig Rochelle. I think he said that people will follow a leader who is a leader who is real over a leader who is right.
From cave drawings to family histories to stories around the fire, humans crave order among chaos, connection amid isolation. So we tell stories. Our mission at the Storytellers Network is to bring the art of story to the masses. Whether you're in marketing, you're an entrepreneur, or you're developing your own personal brand, telling your story effectively can make the difference between celebrating milestones and collecting unemployment. The Storytellers Network strives to help storytellers tell their stories so you can learn from the best. Now, your host, the inbound evangelist himself, Dan Moyle.
And welcome to the Storytellers Network podcast. I'm so glad you're tuning in today and listening to this episode because we're hearing from a lawyer who uses social media to connect with an audience and to tell stories. And even though he doesn't think he's a storyteller, he really is. And we work through that together. And social media is not a normal outreach vehicle for most attorneys, but Jeshua Lauka from Grand Rapids, Michigan, is incredibly talented at using social media and not just, spamming his connections with junk, right? He actually tells stories and connects, and it's incredible. And we've known each other through social media, through Twitter and now LinkedIn for years and years. And this was our first time actually being able to talk, and it was amazing. So according to his LinkedIn profile, Jeshua is an attorney at a boutique business law firm located in downtown Grand Rapids, Michigan, where he practices business, real estate, estate and trust work, and related litigation. He loves what he does, and you can hear it in his voice. And he has a special passion for nonprofit board governance and social enterprise. He also writes about legal issues on his own blog, which is linked to the show notes. And today, Jeshua shares with the Storytellers Network his storytelling craft, his successes and stumbles, in other words, his story. And as we get into that story, a friendly reminder to visit thestorytellersnetwork.com for more episodes from the past, all 3 other seasons, for how to contact me, and for other helpful resources to better tell your story. And hey, if you're new and you're listening for the first time, you can text Storytellers to 31996 to subscribe. Super easy, 31996, and just text Storytellers to that. Now, let's get to the stories. So thank you so much, Jeshua, for joining me on the Storytellers Network podcast. How is your day going so far?
It's going great. I've been looking forward to talking with you, Dan. Thank you.
Cool, man. So as I mentioned in my intro, we've been connected on social media for several years, but this is the first time we really talked. But
Yep.
I wanted to invite you on the show because I see you as someone who uses social media really well to tell stories and to connect with people and that kind of thing. Do you actually consider yourself a storyteller?
I've never thought of it that way. I've considered myself a storyteller. I think what I've wanted to do is really just share my heart and be authentic. I guess that's probably number one. So, but I guess in a sense, yeah, I am telling stories. So,
and isn't it funny too how I see certain people that I've talked to as storytellers, and I've heard this a few times of, well, I don't consider myself that, but I guess I do. And so do you think that's kind of in us innately to tell stories in order to connect with people?
I completely agree, 100%. I think that's how we do connect. And when I think of the ways that I'm engaged in whether it's a story I'm reading or whether it's somebody I'm listening to, it's when they talk about story, when they talk about personal life of who you are, and that's really what connects me and what captivates my attention. So I completely agree with that, Dan.
Yeah. So I want to explore something with you, Jeshua. Something I consider kind of a unique situation. You're an attorney who seems to use social media well. Usually you think of like lawyer ads as a big ugly billboard, bad bus benches, terrible jingle on the radio or bad acting, but not you.
Sure.
Did you set out purposefully to use social media to connect? I mean, you said earlier to share your heart and be authentic, but did you think, okay, social media is a place where I can actually make connections and find clients, or is it more just connecting?
It is completely 100% just connecting, relationship building, and that's probably kind of what looks different than. Although I don't really follow a whole lot of other lawyers, I think the ones that I do follow do that well. It is just the connecting piece. If they're just law firms with slogans and advertising what they do, I really don't pay attention to that. But yeah, I did kind of just set out to find a way to connect. How do I relationship build? And I use the word authentic because I think that's what it has to be. I really haven't gone out there trying to really toot my own horn and try to say, hey, look at me and who I am and the great things that I'm doing, and try to sell myself to the world. It really just going out to connect and I would say be other focused.
Mm-hmm. And it's something that I've explored over this year of the podcast is being authentic and connecting in those relationships and how story plays a part in that. Is that something that you've ever given much thought to, as far as like how storytelling plays a part in that relationship building and in your profession both?
Certainly in relationship building and my profession, that's an interesting question. I think we all wear a lot of different hats. We as a lawyer, I put on my lawyer hat and I'm there to do kind of my job, and the other areas, although they're all connected. I think honestly, I think that if someone were to ask me, who are you? What do you do? A lawyer is not what I would say. It's not. I don't identify myself as that's who I am. So because of that, I think anytime that I talk, or whether it's on social media, I'm just doing it out of my authentic self. If that makes sense to you, I rambled a bit there.
Yeah, absolutely. No, you ramble away. That's the best part about this podcast is, man, we can say whatever we want.
Appreciate it.
Now, so I would think, and I guess I can speak for myself. When I think of an attorney, oftentimes, probably because of media, we think about trial attorneys, and I would guess that storytelling plays a big part in that. It's almost like you're on stage. For you, Jeshua, when it comes to real estate and trust and business lawyer, you're probably not in a courtroom, are you? Is it more about relationships?
It is primarily about relationships, but I do find myself in court. So really, my client base are my relationships, and it's typically business. And so because of that, just like everybody, if you're in business any amount of time, I tell my clients, you're probably going to get sued. And when that happens, unfortunately, it does happen, I do find myself in court. And so I do find myself in situations where I am telling stories in some respects in court, whether it's a judge or jury, typically a judge. But I would say the majority of what I do is client-based, what I would call it transactional work, where I call it the happy work. And I'm not there because my client's been sued or is trying to sue. It's happy work. But I do get to court, I'd say on a fairly regular basis, for business disputes or real estate disputes.
And I like that you say that story comes into play there. You're not telling tall tales, but you're telling a narrative. And so sharpening those storytelling skills is always important, probably. Yeah.
Yeah, right. And ultimately it's about telling the true story. Being believable, telling a story that rings true, and being credible, so that particularly when you're in front of the same judges over and over again, when you appear in front of them, they'll say, oh, hopefully when they look at me, they say, hey, oh, it's Jeshua. I can rely on the story that he's telling me as one being factually accurate. So.
Yeah, absolutely. So to get back to social media, when I first started on Twitter back in 2008, Follow Friday was a thing and all these different stuff. And I love that you still do follow Friday. When I see you tag me with a bunch of people, I go look at them and I follow them and stuff like that. And it's so much fun.
Yeah.
How does that whole thing impact you? How does Follow Friday impact Jeshua?
I think the way that I look at social media, but particularly Twitter, I find it a way just to engage, connect, and I look at it as a way just to, again, not be me focused, but others. How can I say to this group of people, hey, I'm thinking about you today, and I think you should think about other. I think you should connect with these people, just like it causes you to look up each one of those back. That's fantastic because that's what I hope for is that I can engage in a way that makes other people feel appreciated and connected. Not that I'm out there just wanting people to consume something I'm giving them, but to connect. So that really is the purpose of why I stick with Foul Friday. I think it's a great way just on Friday to say, hey, um, I'm thinking about all of you, and I think highly of all of you in different respects, and I want the world to know about that.
That's cool. That's
Hmm.
it's humbling when to be a part of that and see some of those folks that you're sharing. I'm like, wow,
Sure,
this is pretty good. This is pretty good company. So that's a
appreciate
fun
that.
that's a good way to use social. I mean, I feel like
Yeah,
social media, especially as I'm talking to social media storytellers this season, we get so focused on the negativity, but using it in a positive way is so
yeah,
cool. So well done, man.
yeah. Thanks,
Uh,
appreciate it.
yeah, of course. Where else do you think storytelling helps? And I ask this because I've seen you tell the story of helping the homeless, let's say, or Pride for
Yeah.
Your City for Grand Rapids, Michigan. Is storytelling helpful in those aspects too?
Yes, it certainly is. Um, I look at you raise the issue, of homelessness particularly. I'll give the example that I typically give, and that's every Thursday, during the school year, I'm meeting with an elementary school student in a school that's very economically depressed, and um, the backgrounds of the kids. Over the last 5 years, I've had 4 or 5 different students because they all move, or I mean, oftentimes they're very transient. They'll get evicted, or just there's a lot up in the air. There's a lot of just there's a lot of hurt, and it's right in our neighborhood. And so, to me, telling story in through social media and in other contexts, whether it's through my blog, for situations like that, it's to tell people, look, this isn't something far off in a way and intangible. Doesn't This is in your own backyard. There are people who, I mean, are struggling with homelessness, with fatherlessness, with addiction. There are families in poverty, and it's right in your neighborhood. And so, in some small way, I'm saying, hey, there is something tangible we all can do about it. I mean, it doesn't have to be big, but there's something tangible we can do about it. And storytelling, I think, really can make that impact. At least in my mind, is I think it should.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you have the opportunity to tell those stories, are you ever concerned with sharing someone's story that that they don't want you to share, or are you really careful about how
Yeah.
you frame it?
I do, yes, and I look at that as I look at it in my legal blog, and I often talk about client issues, and I try to be careful to do it in as vague and generalities as possible, not to connect anyone with anything. And so I do. I'm mindful before I ever click that button of, what is there any identifying factors here? Is it a story that and fortunately, I guess, and unfortunately, it's a story that is affecting a lot of different kids. And so I'm telling a story out there, I think, that affects a lot of people that needs to be told.
Yeah. What would you say to the Storyteller Network listeners as I hear you talk about that, and I can hear your passion, Joshua, and I can see that you're making a difference. What would you want to tell the listeners about that plight and wherever they are, and like
Um,
and helping, I guess, like how, I guess maybe that's the question, is how can those listeners who are hearing your passion and saying, man, that's amazing, I never thought about it that way, what can they do right now where they are to help tell those stories?
yeah, that's a great question. Anywhere that you are located, there are children who um, need a stable adult in their lives to just tell them they're valued, to tell them, you're unique, you're just to show up regularly. And it's not even a large commitment. It could be through a lot of different organizations. The one I work with through my church is Kids Hope Network, Kids Hope USA, but it is just showing up one time a week. I mean, I could say I can't think of a better use of an hour of my time a week than sitting with an elementary school kid during their lunch hour and just being there and showing them they're valued. So it's a small thing like that. I think there are a lot of small ways that you can give back that can affect in a whole lot of different ways. So.
And those small steps don't have to be overwhelming, and they can all get to a bigger story, I guess, right?
Exactly. You're absolutely right. Right.
So I want to get back to something you said. You made
Sure.
reference twice to your legal blog. What drove you to start writing about those legal issues and putting it out in the world?
I thought that it was useful information that if there are things that in the law are applicable to clients that I'm working with at a time, and I didn't really see a whole lot of other blogs doing things like that. That's really what made me just start out small. And if there are areas that are, like I said, clients that find themselves in those situations, they could go to something and find some resources. So that's really what got me doing it.
And have you seen that kind of pay off? And I don't mean like in a monetary way, but have you seen that pay off by putting it out there in the world and helping people?
Yeah, exactly. Primarily because I know a lot of people who subscribe to my WordPress blog, they're my clients. And so really that kind of drives what would I think these several clients in these type of, what would be of interest to them so that they know when they're dealing with these circumstances. And so more than anything, it's been good to educate my clients so that I don't have to, it's something that I think they find that I'm adding value to them and others. And obviously, I'm not just trying to add value to my clients, but anyone else out there who would be in my network and see that.
And were you a writer before that? Did that come naturally to you to just launch a blog?
Gee, that's another good question. As lawyers, I mean, we are writers, and so it comes with, I think most of what you get trained in law school, but you get a lot of head knowledge, is legal writing and legal analysis, and so, for 3 years before practicing law, I was writing an awful lot. So it really didn't seem like a huge jump, but besides that, it really hadn't.
So when you decided to make that leap, is there any advice you can share with storytellers who are thinking, and whether it's writing or video creation or whatever they're thinking about, any advice you'd want to share with people just starting off of like, okay, go tell your story and here's something I overcame or whatever?
Yeah, that's fantastic. I think that part of any blog, I would say, is that part of telling your story, meaning be who you are. I mean, meaning we all want to show the best of ourselves. Nobody likes to share our weaknesses or things that might not put us in the best light. I think those are things that make us human, and those are things that allow us to connect. So I would tell people if they're starting a blog, do those things that you might be uncomfortable with, of just be yourself, be your authentic self. This quote that stuck with me about a couple months ago from the Global Leadership Summit was this pastor named Craig Rochelle. I think he said that people will follow a leader who is real over a leader who is right. I mean, so people want to connect on that level, and so I guess that would be it. Besides, before you click the button and send, make sure that you edit and had some time to look at what you're actually sending out there. I think that's a no-brainer. But
yeah, Craig's fantastic. I've really enjoyed his writings, and I think he's right. I mean, people want to follow authenticity, and if you as a leader or as a storyteller you're scared a little bit of something, don't be afraid to share that. and bring
That's right,
people in.
Dan.
So yeah, that's
Yeah.
good. I like that. How have you seen story change someone's world?
Mm. Wow, that's a big question. Seen story change someone's world.
I mean, I think maybe in part it comes back to, like your mentoring, right? I mean,
Yeah.
have you seen you sharing those stories change someone's world even in a small way?
Oh, without a doubt. I think. Hmm, uh, I want to be. I guess I want to be careful to answer the question you're asking. I guess I'm. Do I see it? Do I see worlds change in the kids that I'm meeting with, or sharing the stories? I guess which one is the question you're asking?
I don't even know. I like all of them.
Yeah, yeah.
I like all the
Well,
questions.
yeah, it's amazing to me to see a kid who is extremely shy because he's meeting with a grown up male who, and he doesn't have his father in his life. He's not around grown up males, but he needs those relationships. And seeing him from being quiet to over the course of a year, just excited and open and talking about everything, and knowing that he's like that because you're investing time in him. To me, that's powerful. So I guess I've had the opportunity to share my own personal story. We all have a story, and seeing how that connects the people afterwards, who, whether it's in like a Christian businessman connection, and sharing my story to that group, or sharing a story to a group called New Canaan Society, or a group of students at the Potter's House, and sharing that story. Again, not to toot my horn, but Grand Rapids Business Journal, their 40 under 40 this year, is giving you 40 seconds to tell your story. And so we went through that process a couple of weeks ago, where we were videotaped. They'll actually show those on October 17th in Grand Rapids at 20 Monroe Live. But sharing my story in 40 seconds, wow, that was a scary thing. But even in that, and seeing the response of being authentic, I think I've answered your question, but I've certainly seen the response of sharing your story and having it be received well.
And congratulations on the 40 under 40. That's pretty pretty impressive, but also kind of fun, I would guess, right?
Yeah, it was a surprise. It really was. It's great.
And do you and so when something like that comes along, and I hear from you, Jeshua, that it's not about me. I want to be others focused. I want to be a servant. Do you see that as an opportunity to use a platform to share others' stories?
Oh, without a doubt. Yeah, and I think that's really what I intended to do with my 40 seconds, and hopefully the message comes across. And it's it, now I've got kind of a a block here. I don't know.
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, I admire you
Mm.
for what you've done with that, and with the is it Potter's House? Is that right?
The Potter's House, that's a
Potter's
local
House.
school. Yep, had
Yeah.
a talk there. Yep, exactly.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's nice for us who have platforms to use that to focus on others and highlight what they do. Do you think that, and I've heard a couple of things from you in this conversation referencing faith. Do you think that
Yeah.
faith is something that brings that out in you?
It's the core of what brings it out in me.
Mm-hmm.
Quite honestly, it's because as I said in my story, which I guess it'll be interesting to hear what that comes out, because I didn't get to see the tape when I did my 40-second story for the GRBG 40 under 40. But my intent behind sharing that story was, gee, but for where my life was, and but for the grace and love of God coming into my life, you know, my story would look a lot different. And so it's 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 core to who I am to share my story of really grace in my life, and it drives me to tell that story, even as uncomfortable as it is sometimes, because if we're real, our stories aren't always great about good things that happen to us or good things about our family. We all have imperfect families, but um, it's a story that I think we all have stories worth telling, and being authentic really allows people to connect with that story.
Absolutely. And do you have a favorite story that you've heard that has moved you in some way?
Um, Gosh, there have been so many of them. There really have. Um, I'm thinking about where I would, whether it's these events where I have had the opportunity to speak at for Christian Businessman Connection, CBMC, New Canaan Society, or I'll say the Economic Club. Usually, those stories that I find most impactful, um, and I'll use CBMC as an example. They're typically stories of CEOs of large companies who've received a lot of success in this life, but will be honest if they're honest with themselves. Will say they didn't have everything together. In fact, it was just a matter of time before it blew up, um, and really be authentic about those details and talk about um, really not being able to come alive and live with purpose until they hit rock bottom and realize that the things they were grasping for really weren't going to fulfill them in the end. That's kind of vague. Those aren't specific, but there's a lot of those stories.
Oh, sure. And that again, I hear you keep coming back, Joshua, to authenticity and just being real with people and sharing the real stories. It doesn't have to be, extra inspirational. It just has to be real. So
That's
and
right.
that impacts others. So that's good. And
Exactly.
I could sit and chat all day with you, but I won't do that to either of us. But man, this has been fascinating. I go back to the idea that I love that how you use social media to tell stories, to highlight stories, to help others, to inspire. So well done there. If before I let you go though, if you could only tell one last story and you were done telling stories, what would that story be?
It would be my own story because I know it well. I mean, we
Yeah.
all know our own stories, and so um, I would say, where did I come from, and where am I, um, and again, I could tell you where I came from, and uh, but for the grace and love of God coming in and transforming my life, I know where I would be, and it would be no place good. And so I'm. That's the story I'm going to tell to people. Is
Mm.
nothing good that I've done. Anything good, anything that looks well on me, it's not anything I've done. And I'm just thankful for the ability to tell that.
So story of faith, of gratitude, and of adversity. That's a good one.
Yep,
Excellent.
yep,
Well,
that's
thanks
right,
for your
Dan.
time today. Where's the best place people can find Jeshua?
LinkedIn and Twitter primarily. Yeah,
Excellent.
yeah. My blog connects to each of those, but definitely LinkedIn and Twitter.
Cool. I'll put the links in the show notes for everybody, man. Thanks for your time today.
Thanks, Dan. Great talking with you. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. All right. Thank you so much to my guest, Jeshua Lauka. Be sure to visit him online. You can find those links to all the resources and to Jeshua down in the show notes. And if you enjoyed the episode, please consider sharing it all over in that social media that we just talked about: Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. You can email it to somebody, you can text it. Anywhere that you can share with other storytellers is always helpful, and I do appreciate it. And hey, if you're new, listening for the first time, text Storytellers to 31996 to subscribe, and you can get a new episode every Monday morning. And please consider leaving us a review. I appreciate those as well. We've got quite a few. I'll always take more. Anyway, that sounded really desperate, didn't it? Anyway, feel free to leave me a review. You can do it on Apple Podcasts. You can do it on Facebook, wherever you listen to your podcast. And until next time, here's to telling our stories and having stories to tell. Hey, cheers.